Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
So this guy thinks we should enjoy our money instead of never spending it. He calls it the live well, die broke philosophy.
Is this the little man in the sweater vest on TV?
Yeah, that's him. Though he goes by Tony Walker.
Oh, Frank, that man only works with millionaire Rockefeller types.
Now that's not true. He works with everyday, hard-working Americans just like us.
So does that mean I can afford more pantyhose?
Oh, I'm sorry, honey. I already donated the rest to Jimmy Hoffa.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the WorryFree Retirement, with your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist and four-time author, Tony Walker.
I don't know about you, but I love the thought of others who make it their life's mission to represent the little guy. My father, Dick Walker, was such a man. In the late 1950s, his Helping the Little Guy journey began as the recreational director for a local juvenile detention center located on the outskirts of Lexington, Kentucky, called Kentucky Village. While most of the people saw these young men as needing to do the time for the crime, my father viewed them kids who needed a second chance as just someone that needed encouragement. My mom, who lived with Dad at the time in a small one-bedroom apartment provided to them by Kentucky Village, tells me how much these young men respected my father because they knew he cared about them. Just a few years into their marriage, while working days at Kentucky Village, Dad used his talent as a saxophone player and Mom's talent as piano, and he created a dance band which for years entertained numerous crowds in and around Lexington. This photo, taken in the early 60s, features Dad's drummer, an African-American by the name of Johnny Higgins, who started playing in Dad's band at age 13. My dad didn't see things as black or white, he just saw people. And his view about people and serving others made a huge impression on me, as it still does to this day. Fast forward a few years later, Dad would hire on as the director of Lexington's own Children's Bureau, a place that housed foster kids and those mentally challenged, or in those days referred to as mentally retarded. As a kid hanging out at the Children's Bureau watching Dad interact with staff and kids, this too made an impression on me in terms of how much he cared for the well-being of others, as well as continually thinking outside the box on how to entertain them, such as the time in 1969 when he convinced someone at the Fayette County School Board to allow Dad to borrow a full-size school bus so he could transport 30 or 40 kids from the Bureau over to the local skating rink for a day of skating. I remember it like it was yesterday. He and I pulled up in the school bus to get these 30 or so kids who were anxiously waiting, disadvantaged kids, of course, just standing there waiting to board the bus. As Dad opens the side door to the school bus, the kids quickly file in, when all of a sudden the line comes to a stop as a pair of 8-year-old disadvantaged twins by the name of Goody and Woody stand at the foot of the steps staring at Dad, one of the twins with his pants pulled down to his ankles. My dad, without flinching, hollers, "Goody, pull up those pants and get up on this bus," while a young lad seated behind Dad shouts out, "Mr. Walker, that's not Goody, that's Woody," to which Dad responds, "Goody, Woody, whatever your name is, pull your pants up and get on this bus." In 1973, my father moved then from Lexington to Bowling Green, Kentucky, where he would take over a local mental health agency with, at the time, only one full-time employee. Through his passion for looking out for the little guy and the art of written negotiations with the government for funding for the agency, something called government grants, Dad quickly built that organization into one of the largest mental health agencies in the state, which to this day continues to serve the needs of thousands of people from his work. And now, even though Dad's dead and gone, his influence of working and serving others continues on. So what do contracts written by union bosses to represent the little guy grants penned by mental health directors to assist the disadvantaged, and yes, a little man in a sweater vest trying to help savers worry less about money have to do with your retirement? Well, let's find out. Welcome, folks, to the WorryFree Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, that full-time representative of the little guy, safe money specialist and fiduciary, Tony Walker. And today on our show, we're going to reveal why the financial world has little to no interest in working in the best interest of that little guy, and why the little guy is becoming more and more neglected to boot. But before we share with you the difference between investments and contracts, let me introduce three folks here in the studio that are bigger than life, America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orender, Louisville's most laid-back graphics artist, Mr. Derek Hudson, and finally, our newest representative, Miss Meek and Mild Mary Beth Combs. Okay, so Tony, you ask, I'm confused. You started out the program today with a skit referencing the late union boss Jimmy Hoffa, then segue into your father's time representing the little guy and those less fortunate, telling me about contracts and grants and negotiating with men over money. Well, what does that have to do with anything with your retirement? Well, I'm glad you asked, because many of you are currently that little guy in the eyes of the financial world. And as you're going to see, you do not have proper representation of whether you should be saving your money into investments or trying to figure out those contracts everybody keeps pitching to you. So when I return, I'm going to share with you the difference between an investment and a contract, and why in the end you're going to want to have a representative in your corner who can not only help you retire, but be there for you to represent you way into retirement. I'm Tony Walker. You're watching the WorryFree Retirement. I'll be right back. Wondering how much money you'll need to retire? Probably a lot less than you think. I'm retirement specialist Tony Walker, and for the past 36 years, I've helped thousands of savers determine when to retire and how much money they'll need in retirement, and I can help you too. To meet in person at no cost or obligation, let me invite you to log on right now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call the toll-free number on your screen. We look forward to talking with you soon. Oh yes, needed those back. Thank you, Derek. Appreciate that. Whether it's Jimmy Hoffa representing union workers and negotiating on behalf of the little guy with those who employ them, the many written grants my father penned to secure funding for the projects aimed at helping the less fortunate, or, yours truly making it my life's mission to help savers retire worry-free. One thing that stands in the way of savers understanding their options is understanding the difference between investments and contracts, and most importantly, having on their side a representative who understands the differences between the two and which ones might be right for you. So let's start with investments. What is an investment? Well, Webster's defines an investment as follows: the outlay of money, usually for income or profit, or a capital outlay. Pretty simple. I would add that when someone invests or directs specific funds to another entity, for instance, a 401k plan, they are putting money with the entity in hopes that that money will grow, correct? Otherwise, why would you hand over your hard-earned money to others if they're not going to try to give you a higher return on it? I mean, you might as well throw it in the backyard. Yet, with any investment, you take risk of losing money, either through investment risk, interest rate risk, or inflation. Examples of the most popular investments, let's take a look, might be stocks, might be bonds, they could be mutual funds. We've got exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, real estate, and we have bank products. These are just examples of investments. So now, let's turn to legal documents for saving and protecting your money called contracts. How does Webster's define contracts? Well, basically, a contract is a binding agreement between two or more persons or parties, and notice this, it's legally enforceable. Did you catch that last part? A contract is legally enforceable. Investments usually are not. It's totally opposite from investments, which have nothing to do with actually representing the guarantees in your best interest that contracts provide. Now, in other words, when you have an investment, it's kind of hope for the best. with contracts, it's protection in writing from the worst. So what are some examples of contracts? Well, there are many, but the most popular would be contracts issued by insurance companies, otherwise known as insurance policies. Now, you may not know you've got a contract, but you do. You got car insurance, which is a contract, home, life, health, and then one of the more popular contracts that we work with all the time is something called an annuity. And annuities are contracts written, yes, for the little guys. So when you think about these different types of contracts, now don't get me wrong here, contracts can be very complicated. And depending on how these contracts are written, they may or may not always be in the best interest of the little guy, which is all the more reason the little guy better have someone representing him who understands the contracts. So let's take annuity contracts, for instance. This is an example of a policy, okay? This is what they are. They're contracts, written documents. And in my 37 years in this business, what I have discovered is that most advisors do not understand contracts, and thus they have very little understanding of how annuities really work. By the way, to learn more about the type of contracts we at Tony Walker Financial represent for the little guy, let me encourage you to grab a few of these free booklets. That's right, at TonyWalkerFinancial.com you can download either Annuities Made Easy, or if you like, you can also download Insurance Made Easy. If you can't download them or don't have a way to print these out, of course, just call the toll-free number on your screen and let us know that you'd like free copies of Insurance Made Easy and Annuities Made Easy, and we'll be happy to mail those to you. So, is there a way for savers to have it both ways? To own both investments and contracts? Well, yes, there is, and it's our ingenious tool we call the WorryFree Split Ira Concept. And boy, this is a dandy for savers because what it allows you to do is have the best of both worlds. So for instance, we can put money, some of your money in investments, and we have 5 portfolios. Currently, we use Charles Schwab as our custodian, and we do everything for you on that side of the ledger. We pick the funds, we manage the funds, we monitor the funds, we send you distributions. Everything is handled by Tony Walker Financial for a whopping 0.8%, usually about half or more than what most money managers charge, and you get me thrown in for free to help monitor this thing. Then secondly, part of the money, or a good majority of the money, depending on how safe you want this money to be, would then go into the annuity contracts. Now folks, this is where we really shine because I've worked with annuities so long and we represent many different companies. You got to be careful out there. A lot of annuity peddlers are going to just toss your money in the same type of annuity. And because there's so many different types of annuities, and because you want to make sure you have a game plan before purchasing that annuity, that's why we use something called the Split Ira Concept. So if that's you right now, maybe you've got a 401k, a previous 401k from another employer, maybe you're looking to retire soon, maybe you've got a bunch of money languishing in the bank, or recently received an inheritance, you might want to take advantage of this offer to sit down to see how a Split Ira Concept can help you diversify your assets. You can get the best of both worlds with the investments, but you can also make sure you have the safety, security, and protection that annuity contracts afford you. Okay, when we come back, we've got one of the most interesting Tony in the Trenches I've ever done. We're going to be Zooming my favorite nephew and fellow fiduciary, Wes Walker, and he's going to share with us something he heard riding down the road from a financial entertainer on the radio. This is going to be some really good stuff and why you don't want somebody on the radio doing your retirement planning. I'm Tony Walker. You stay tuned. I'll be right back. Who can you trust? It's one of the most important decisions you'll have to make. Question is, are you ready? Well, we're here to help at Tony Walker Financial. You know, we care more about you than we do your money, and we have over 2,000 happy clients and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau to prove it. Rolling over a 401k, confused about Social Security, maybe you're afraid of running out of money. Learn how to use and enjoy and protect your hard-earned money. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. Tony Walker here, and our Tony in the Trenches is actually going to be set up by my favorite nephew, fellow fiduciary, Wes Walker. What do you got for me, Wes?
Well, Tony, I had to share this one with you. So I was riding down the road happened to be listening to a financial entertainer, and the topic they were discussing was about retirement planning. So a caller had called in. They had about $3 million after the sale of their business. They were in their early 60s, and their question was, what should I do to make this money last for my entire retirement? And the answer from the financial entertainer was to just put it all 100% into growth stock mutual funds, live off the 10% that it would produce every year, $300,000, and no worries. So, Tony, I know you might have some differing opinions. I wanted to see what your take on this would be.
Well, I'll take it from here. Thank you, Wes. Okay, let's take a look at what this financial entertainer is talking about. And it's a problem I see time and time again when people don't understand something called macroeconomics, and why you better be careful taking retirement planning advice riding down the road listening to a financial entertainer. Pretty dangerous stuff. So the assumption is, which this is interesting, we went back over the S&P 500 moving backwards. I'm going to take you backwards, back to 2000, 2001, 2002, when the market went down. Backwards, back to 1987 in that range there. Because we want to imagine, we're going to take this person's advice, that you took $3 million and participated in the stock market over a period of time when we could see what the stock market would do to these assumptions. In other words, as the financial entertainer says, if we made on average 10% on our money on $3 million, we should be able to take out $300,000. And yes, in a perfect world, that would be perfect. But folks, macroeconomics tells us we don't live in a perfect world, so we have to understand what happens to this money when we incur cost. So let me kind of walk you through this. So the idea is to understand something I was taught years ago, and this is where we have a problem in today's culture with people doling out advice when they don't know what they're talking about, and that is this. Money is not math. You see, folks, if this was all just about math, we wouldn't need financial advisors such as myself. We would just run over to the local university and hire mathematicians and do math all day. But because we live in an imperfect world with taxes and risk and fees and all these unexpected things that will come our way, math does not work. But here's the basic math this entertainer was assuming. If we have $3 million and we make 10%, okay, which ironically over the past the market has averaged 10%, that means we could take out $300,000. 10% of $3 million is $300,000. And at the end of the year, way over there, we'd still have our $3 million. But that's not really what happens in the real world. In fact, just in this example, actually the rate of return, if we go back in time that we start this out at, in 1986 made about 22%. So you're thinking, gosh, that's even better than 10%, Tony. But we got to remember, assuming that we have fees of 1.5%, we have to deduct $40,500 that would go to the money manager for those fees. See, this is something the financial entertainer didn't cover. We'd also have to cover taxes. We're assuming a 30% tax bracket of approximately $180,000. Now you say, where's that money come from, Tony? Well, in this assumption, what we're doing here, we have to assume we're going to have to take those fees and the taxes from the account. Okay, you're going to see where I'm going with this. This is pretty scary stuff. As we move down, so everything's all well in Mudville. We have a little bit of a drop in 1990, but as we go down into 2000, okay, as we kind of come down to 2000, 2001, and 2002, okay, I want to show you what happens to this. Remember, we're still trying to take out $300,000. If we come over here, all right, we've got $10,000 roughly in fees. You're going to see what's happening in the account. The taxes are going down to $53,000. You say, Tony, why are these fees and taxes going down? I'm going to show you. This is some really scary stuff. Over here, we have 7,946, no taxes. And then finally, we have very little fees and no taxes at all. And you say, Tony, I'm totally confused. Why in the world are these taxes and fees going down? Because under this person's assumption, again, $3 million, averaging 10%, taking out the 10% earnings, you got all these taxes and fees. The problem with this is, in the 17th year, this person would have run out of money. Let me repeat that. After taking out all this money, after all the fees, taxes, all this risk, basically the person has no money. So you might be saying, Tony, I don't understand. Why, if the average rate of return was 10, how could this happen? Because we had the losses. You see, folks, this is the problem and my huge concern for many of you who do not understand what's going to happen when you retire. It's one thing to go through market downturns and all these things when you're 35 or 40 years of age. But if you're getting ready to retire and we go through something similar to this and you're drawing out this kind of a money and you've assumed 10% rate of return, folks, that's not going to work. In fact, in this case, as you've seen, you could one day run out of money, which is why we created the Split Ira Concept. The reason you've got to have, if you're a saver, the reason you've got to have those annuities built in is we have to make sure you don't run out of money. So yeah, we could have had your money with Charles Schwab and not made the rates of return we'd hoped, or made 10 or 12, it doesn't matter, but with taxes and fees, that bucket would run out of money. What the annuity does is to make sure on this far end that we still have some sort of income that's coming in for the rest of your life. So the next time you hear a financial entertainer or somebody from Wall Street kind of dissing annuities and saying you don't want annuities, and well, you got to ask them, okay, that's fine, but are you going to guarantee me that I won't run out of money? And their answer has to be, as we've seen, no, they cannot guarantee you won't run out of money. So as we think about the financial entertainers and the pundits out there, we also have to say, what went wrong here? Why do so many people get just bad advice from people that don't understand retirement planning? So folks, if you don't have somebody like us in your corner laying out something like this, why don't you do this right now? Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call the toll-free number on your screen. We'd be happy to provide a retirement game plan that you can count on. Well, what does the Bible have to say about the law and things we should and shouldn't do and who's going to represent the little guy? Good stuff coming your way? Let me get a cup of coffee. I'll be right back. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today. Imagine you are caught red-handed committing a serious crime, a crime whose penalty is death. The case, to determine your fate, goes to a man-made court trial. In that courtroom are three key players: the attorney assigned to represent you, called the defense attorney, a second attorney assigned by the court to prosecute your crime with the intention of proving your guilt, and a judge who will hear the evidence and decide your ultimate fate, in this case, whether you live or die. Since everybody and his brother knows you are guilty, the general public assumes that any and all arguments by your attorney as to why you should be innocent of the crime will fall on deaf ears with this judge, and you will receive the death penalty. That's because the judge in a man-made courtroom is not there to represent you, but to represent the law. And if you are guilty of breaking the law, you must pay the price, no matter how persuasive your defense attorney representing you might be. But let's imagine a different courtroom, one that is not man-made but God-made. In it are three of the same positions, but with different players. In God's courtroom of law, the prosecuting attorney is the devil. The attorney representing your case and pleading your case for the innocence is a man by the name of Jesus Christ. The judge, the one who will decide if you live or die, well, that's God. So your case begins with the devil standing up and ranting and raving about the heinous crime you have committed and why you deserve the death penalty. He goes on for hours unloading about all the other crimes you've committed as well. And after finally resting his case, he sits down. Then it's Jesus' turn to speak. But instead of jumping up to refute all that the devil claims you've done against God and everybody else, he instead calmly and slowly and confidently approaches the bench. With a hush that falls over the entire courtroom, Jesus leans over toward God and whispers into his ear, "Come on, Dad, give him a break." In the book of Lamentations, a book penned some 500 years before the appearance on earth of mankind's one and only God-made representative, a man by the name of Jesus, the Jewish people were being held captive by the Babylonians and had lost all hope. It got so bad for the Jews that they were in constant tears, lamenting over their plight and their lost cause. Yet we see in Lamentations 3:58 the prophet Jeremiah reminding them of this, "O Lord, you took up my case." In other words, it's nice to know that the judge is on your side and listening to your case. Look at the hope of the gospel as expressed by Paul in Romans 8:2-3, where it says, "For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has set you free from the law of sin and death. For what the law could not do, weak as it was through the flesh, God did, sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh as offering for sin. He condemned sin in the flesh." You see, friend, this is some good news, and assuming you've accepted Jesus Christ to represent you in God's court of law, you can rely on God to provide the mercy you need to be released scot-free. That's because in the eyes of God, by faith in Christ, we are now seen as innocent. Armed with such good news, no matter what you are going through or what you might have done in the past and the guilt you feel over those types of things, by his death, you and I are now innocent. He's already paid the price for your guilt, so there's no fear of approaching the bench in your time of need. So what are we to do during these turbulent and uncertain times? How can we be at peace knowing that we are forgiven and innocent in the eyes of God? Well, we simply do as we are instructed to do in Hebrews 4:16, which says, "We approach the throne of God with confidence, knowing that we are forgiven." And friend, that's a confidence you can take to the bank. Amen? Well, how about you? You might be saying to yourself, "Tony, that is some awful good news, partner, and I'm sure it's good to know that I've got a representative to help me in times of my spiritual needs, but right now, partner, I need some help with my financial needs. Who's going to represent me in doing that?" To which I'd say, that's us at Tony Walker Financial. So if you're that person sitting there that feels like the little guy, maybe you're feeling like you're just a number with a big old financial world that cares more about your money than they do you, we need to talk. And it's really easy to do, and best of all, it's absolutely free. And you can get in contact with me one of two ways. First, you can go to our website at TonyWalkerFinancial.com, and while there, you just click on that Let's Get Started button. Now, when you click on that button, everything is confidential, and that information you send stays within the confines of Tony Walker Financial. You'll be contacted, and I'll either talk with you by phone, or if it warrants, I'll be happy to meet with you in person at either our Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky offices. If going on the internet's not convenient for you, guess what? You can just call the toll-free number on your screen right now. That's right, 24/7. If we're not in, we have an answering service that will answer your call, and then first thing Monday morning, our offices will call you back. So again, TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or call the toll-free number on your screen. Well, we hope you've enjoyed today's program. We've enjoyed being with you, but you remember, between now and next week, if all else fails, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.